like them thin, others thick, some scary, others romantic. No matter what kind of book you're into, you're bound to find something to tickle your fancy here at the Salon du Livre, or the Paris Book Fair. The annual event attracts over 200,000 people over 4 days. Come with me as I thumb through some of the highlights, including the spy secrets from American author Robert Littell, to why books by foreign authors are becoming a luxury in Argentina. But first, let's find out what the fair's recipe for success is.
The race for autographs started early at the Paris Book Fair. With a host of their favourite authors under one roof, these bookworms definitely know where to come to feed.
For the reader, it's paradise.
It's a real pleasure because it's very huge, and there are a lot of countries represented in.
Some 3,500 writers mingle amongst these hallowed shelves every year. We found one self-confessed Francophile and book fair regular, the US best-selling author Douglas Kennedy.
It's one of the great book fairs of the world. It's also in the city that I have lived in off and on for 14 years. I have a pied-à-terre here. And more to the point, I have a huge public in France. And so it's very important for me to meet them.
It's a pleasure that France's political elite has never missed out on either. In 1982, President François Mitterrand opened the fair at Paris's Grand Palais. As numbers swelled over the years, the fair migrated to bigger premises at the Porte de Versailles complex. And now, the range of books just keeps on growing. Paperbacks, comic books, graphic novels, in all kinds of languages. The good old hard copy still clearly sells, but times are changing.
Actually, it's going to change a little bit because you can read on paper and you can read on screen with the digital books. And this revolution, of course, all around the world is going on.
Tablets are clearly here to stay, but the stand that's been getting mouths watering the most in recent years is the culinary section, showcasing the creme de la creme of cookery books, proof that there are still a few chapters left in the life of the humble book.
France is one of the most foreign literature-friendly countries in the world. Some 40% of books sold here are translations. So it's little wonder that authors from all corners of the globe come here to the Paris Book Fair. I've been trying to track some down, but France 24's book critic SYLVIA Whitman beat me to it, and with the master of espionage, no less, American author Robert Littell now calls France home and is one of the most prominent guests at this year's fair. He let SYLVIA in on some of his spy secrets.
Robert, thank you so much for being with us today. My first question for you is about your most recent book, A Nasty Piece of Work, which is quite a change in direction. It's a detective noir set predominantly in New Mexico rather than espionage thriller. Can you tell us what inspired you for that, and did you enjoy that change?
I like to experiment, and I like to do things that are different, because it's challenging to your head to try to concoct something different. So I set it in a place in America where I actually lived for 3 months. My wife and I, a few years ago, went out to New Mexico. We were very interested in the Anasazi, which are the original American Indians, and their sites and all that stuff. So we lived there for 3 months, and we drove from there through Nevada and through California to Los Angeles. So that's where that book comes from.
Okay. And you began your writing career as a journalist for Newsweek.
I began my writing career when I quit as a journalist for Newsweek.
Okay. And what drove you to transition to writing fiction, or was that always your desire?
I guess I always dreamed one day, I guess most journalists dream of one day trying their hand at writing fiction. Mm-hmm. And
Hemingway, George Orwell.
Everybody, yeah, there's a great tradition, yes. Sure. And the day came along where I got my courage together, and I had enough money in the bank. I had saved my money, and I had 2 little kids, and a third of a house in the south of France. And I said, now or never. And I moved to the little house in the south of France. I had 1 year's worth of money, and I wrote my first novel. And I've been at it ever since because I've had good luck in agents and good luck in publishers, and I'm still at it. This novel that you're talking about is number 18.
Number 18, wow. And the novel that you published in 2002, called The Company, a novel of the CIA, it's a definitive historical anthology of the CIA and KGB, but it's written as fiction. Why did you decide to write that history as fiction?
The book about the CIA, the only way to do it, there's too much that's not known that you have to invent. You, the writer, has to invent if you want to get at the things that are really happening. Yeah. This is all, don't forget I wrote this book long before Snowden told us what the NSA was doing. Right. But we were guessing that for years and years.
Would you describe yourself as a political writer?
Or? give me other choices. I absolutely must have an A, B, C, D. Otherwise,
no, this is a.
What's the other choices?
No, there's no choice. It's a zero.
Well, you'd say, are you a pornographic writer? Come on, give me some.
I was going to say erotic writer. No, political writer. Just you'd have no choice.
Yeah, I think what I've been writing about for all these years is basically the Cold War.
Yeah.
That's been my main subject, absolutely. A lot of people think I write spy stories or stories about spies, and I've written stories about Bulgaria, and I've written stories about Russia, novels, and I think what I'm writing about is the Cold War and the ridiculousness of the Cold War. And to get back in it now would be even more ridiculous than the original Cold War.
Thank you so much for your time.
Well, thank you for your time, and thank you for coming out to play.
Every year, the Paris Book Fair invites a country to be the guest of honor. And this year, they're bringing a bit of the Latin American spirit to Paris with Argentina. But with it has come both celebrity and controversy. President Cristina Kirchner made the most of her state visit to France to help inaugurate the fair. But there's criticism surrounding authors chosen to represent the country here, with some saying famous writers who've aired anti-government views were unfairly snubbed. Just like its most famous author, Julio Cortázar, who was forced to eventually leave Argentina for speaking out against the establishment, contemporary Argentinian writers saying they're being left out in the cold. Still though, some 50 Argentinian writers have descended here in Paris for the fair, and someone who can help us get to know them a little bit better is Argentinian literary specialist Miguel Pacheco. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
First of all, when people think of Argentinian writers, names like Borges and Cortázar probably spring to mind immediately. But what are some other must-read writers?
Well, first of all, we should mention an author like Roberto Aral, who was contemporary of Borges and who is associated to another tradition of Argentinian literature, with an urban literature, colloquial literature. And then there are many writers that have appeared after Borges, like, for example, we could mention César Aira, who is a very prolific writer who has influenced younger writers. I'm talking about writers who are present in the saloon. You could mention Sergio Vizio, I could mention Selva Almada, who is a young writer, and also poetry, like two major poets like Diana Bellesi and Arnaldo Calveira. Diana Bellesi is the Argentine National Award, and Arnaldo Calveira is one of the most important Argentine poets.
Great tips there. But what are some qualities that define Argentinian writing?
Well, I think it's literature that is at the same time local and universal. It pays a lot of attention to foreign influences and also to local traditions and tries to amalgamate them. And it's also literature associated to reality, to politics, that has the changes in society have influenced literature very, very strongly.
Okay, Miguel, well, thank you so much for your time and for those pointers. There's some great tips there for our viewers. And this is something I'm sure you know a thing or two about. Buenos Aires, like Paris, has a rich literary scene. The Argentinian capital is littered with bookstores, from the old and extravagant to the rather more inventive, but the country's publishing industry is a bit worried because restrictive government measures means books by foreign authors have become somewhat of a luxury product. Our correspondent Rebecca Martin explains.
Damian Tabarovsky works in a small independent publishing house in Buenos Aires. Sales were encouraging over the last few months, but things are now looking a little gloomy for the company.
International bestsellers are no longer imported. They're printed here in Argentina. But those that aren't top sellers aren't even printed here. It wouldn't be profitable, and they are no longer imported either. I think it's seriously worrying and a form of censorship, even though it may not be the government's agenda.
Foreign books have only been trickling into Argentina since 2012. The Kirchner government has dramatically hampered imports, officially for health and safety reasons. The ink used abroad allegedly contains too much lead. As a result, millions of foreign publications are missing from the store shelves, while the national printing industry has been given a boost. Adding to Argentinians' struggle to find a good read is the country's economic difficulties. A 30% annual inflation rate, peso devaluation, and paper that's increasingly rare and expensive make books less and less affordable. But few are ready to give in. Nurit has set up a private bookshop in her house. She goes the extra mile to provide unique books to her clients.
I have some editions that are no longer available because the publishers left me the books when closing down. I have rare books from foreign authors that are sent directly to my home. And I have limited editions that are just too small to make it in bookshops anywhere.
This book, for instance, you will not find it anywhere else. There are only 50 copies of it. It's almost a collector's piece.
Although foreign books are becoming more scarce within the country, Argentine literature is increasingly popular overseas. The government subsidizes translations into 32 foreign languages, including French. But authors who haven't been given that opportunity are hoping the Paris Book Fair will be a stepping stone for them.
Well, like all great novels, we've saved a little twist for the end of our story. There's no denying it that comic books are traditionally a man's world. But this year at the Paris Book Fair, they're honouring the women behind the speech bubbles. From pioneering French cartoonist Claire Bretéché's unimpressed teenager Agrippine to Anne Goitzinger's Art Nouveau ladies. We're going to leave you now with the characters bursting the bubbles of their male counterparts. Enjoy and happy reading, bookworms.